Lots of people talk about chasing their dreams, but how many actually do it? Welcome to the Pursue Your Passion podcast with Tyler Kammerman. We're going to introduce you to people who are intentionally pursuing their passion every day. Through their stories of success and their struggles, you'll gain insight into how to better begin or continue your journey. Now here's Tyler with today's guest.
Welcome back, Passion Pursuers. This is Tyler Kammerman with you as always. It is a cold, blustery day in Iowa. Well, at least when we're recording this. So I'm doing this via Zoom with my friend Mallory, who I will introduce in just a moment. Excited to have her on the show. Mallory Robinson is a writer and a journalist living in rural small town Iowa, emphatically by choice. A wife, a mom, a sister, an auntie, and friend are all roles she walks out every day while in constant pursuit to share the stories of those around her. A public relations and graphic design professional that loves content creating for herself and others, pursuing that which brings joy to herself and those around her, and who thrives in writing and sharing the stories of others. I love that. That's such a great bio. Mal, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tyler. It's so good to see you, hear your voice, and it's just like sitting down to talk with old familiar friends. So that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and I am fully confident that that's the way that the conversation's going to go. So,
Yeah. Cool.
if this is your first time tuning in, like it says in the show bio, my goal is to seek out people who are actively pursuing their passion, and that comes in a lot of different shapes and forms. So I'm really excited to go from my guest Brandon on the last show, who's a technical guy, to Mal, who is all about telling her story and telling other people's stories. So I know that you're going to enjoy this conversation, and I'm looking forward to it too. So Mal, thanks again for being
Me
here.
too. Yeah, you bet. Thank you for asking. I'm super excited.
Good. So, a lot of times I just kick it off with, tell us about the passion or passions that you are intentionally pursuing. And I know that there is a plural passions when it comes to the story of Mallory Robinson. So I am just going to kick it off with that.
Yeah.
Tell us about what you are intentionally pursuing right now, and what's really got your motor turning.
Yeah, you bet. That's such a great question. And you kind of teed up the Mallory Robinson character pretty well when you said there is probably a plural on the end of passions, because I think for most people who know me, I'm a pretty outwardly emotional, passionate person. I kind of take on everything at full speed. And so, something that I think we can maybe get to later in the story is kind of how one with maybe a personality or a character of that nature kind of hones in, some of those passions. But so for now, to answer your question, I am actively pursuing life in rural Iowa, which is where my husband and I are born and raised in Atlantic. And in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, we moved back home in pursuit of that specific passion, living on a farm in rural Iowa. And so that kind of is just a constant passion that is maybe slowly burning in the background in the day to day tasks of
Yeah.
literally where we live and how we are living. And as far as what passion I am pursuing right now would be writing. So, writing is something that I have always done really through my whole life. I took a journalism class in high school, and just kind of from that moment, um, actually, that's not true. When I was in second grade, my second grade teacher had a project all through our second grade year that was called Writer's Workshop. And we actually wrote and created books of our own.
Wow.
And I have all of those books still. And that was really something.
That is
I
awesome.
It is awesome. I think my love of writing really started there, and that teacher, Mrs. Oswald, she really fostered that in anyone that wanted, to do that. So that has just been something I've done my whole life. And for most of my life, the writing has really just been kind of close to the cuff. I maybe share a blog post here or there. If it was something that kind of felt like, too heavy to keep to myself or too important to keep to myself, maybe. And then when we moved home, I reached out to our local newspaper and asked how somebody would go about having a column in the newspaper. How does that work? And the editor reached back out to me, and through kind of a series of conversations, I sort of launched this weekly column that I write in our newspaper. And that has turned into, over the last year, some assigned work from our local newspaper. And
Cool.
that has kind of transpired to what I really think I'm kind of called to walk out in this passion of sharing other people's stories. So it's something that just brings me brings me great joy. And I believe that I've just been given the gift to kind of hear someone's stories and then articulate it in a way that really honors who they are as a person. And so that's a that's a that's a big honor in my life to be able to do that.
That's really cool. So, now, I love, when you said that you went to your hometown newspaper, I immediately kind of went, they probably were like, yes, because they're probably looking for, I mean, and that's no
Yeah.
disrespect to where you're from. I'm just thinking
Right.
small town newspapers in general, they're probably like, yes, we need content. Like, yes,
Yeah.
please.
What's funny is I had this idea because growing up, there was a lady that had a weekly column in our paper, and
Cool.
I loved it. And she would kind of write about all different things, her travels. She would highlight some like graduating seniors in the community who were maybe active in a variety of different things. And I happened to be one of the seniors my senior year that she wrote about. And I remember her coming to my house, sitting on my couch in the living room. And I just thought, gosh, this is so cool. Like she gets to do this, and now going forward, I realized that, yeah, you know, that was something that she just pursued on her own. That was obviously a passion of hers. She was a business owner in town, so that was not her full-time job. And so,
Oh, wow.
yes, when I reached out to Jeff, I thought, gosh, maybe this isn't like, maybe they will think, no, we're not. But I guess to echo what you're saying, yes, I think small town newspapers are eager for content. And so
Right.
it's cool to be able to partner with them in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is, so it started with kind of, hey, this weekly thing. And now, you're saying, hey, where I really feel like I'm going with this is to tell other people's stories, which is awesome. I mean, I would say that that's probably the thing that I enjoy most, not really knowing where this
Yeah.
was going to go when I started this a year and a half ago. To hear you say that, I'm like, that's why I love doing this, because I get to ask awesome people questions and they tell me about what they're working on. So in a way, I'm not doing it, via writing. I'm doing it via interview, but it's a very similar thing. Um,
Absolutely.
so do you have I guess do you have a through line with these stories, or how are you finding your people, and where, how's that going, I guess?
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest but most fun challenges I'm finding kind of in this pursuit. So, when I started the column, I knew I wanted to write. I knew that for sure. I wanted to write. I really wanted to accept the challenge of writing without restraint. I mean, they really said my topics could be really anything I wanted. I mean, there was really no, because it's they're not I'm not an employee of the newspaper, so it's me having to back up essentially whatever I write. So it could be about anything.
Sure.
Um, but that their only requirement is that if I commit to it, that I commit to it. So I can't do 2 weeks and then miss five and then,
Right.
and so that was kind of a new component for me to know that I would need to write on a dedicated, scheduled basis. And so I have and you probably do too, you're driving in the car and you get an idea and you jot it down in your notes section on your phone. And so I have probably, I think I looked the other day, like 1,300 notes in my phone of just thoughts and ideas and things like that. And so in the beginning, I thought, maybe I would start trying to make sense of some of those notes, but they're really just thoughts on the experiences that I've had in life, right? Like they're thoughts and ideas from my brain. And so I did in the beginning share some of those, my time in Africa, time with grief, deployment stories of Jay,
Yeah.
things and kind of takeaways from my personal life experiences. But then we actually went to my husband's grandmother's funeral, and I walked in and I saw our local catering person who also owns a diner in town. And this thought struck me that how she really walks through so many different stages of people's life in this small town. So, bridal showers, baby showers, weddings, funerals, she's serving the people of our community in all those aspects. And I thought, what a cool story to share her story.
Yeah.
Well, I asked her if I could sit down and just talk with her. And she said, yes, sure. So that kind of got me shifting my perspective of the people that I naturally come across on a daily basis. So that kind of steamrolled into writing about my mechanic that I absolutely adore, that many people adore, who started his business in a small shop in a town kind of adjacent to Atlantic. And then that kind of just started steamrolling. And so at the bottom of each of these stories that I write, um, some just in my weekly column and some at the News Telegraph, will come across somebody and they'll say, "Ooh, maybe would you like to write about this person?"
Oh,
So
so
I
they're starting to kind of kick you ideas now as well.
Yes, they
Okay,
are.
cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I kind of have a disclaimer at the bottom that says, is there somebody that that I could have the opportunity to sit down and learn about and write? I would love to hear, who that is for you. And so that's just been in the last maybe month that I've kind of started putting that in my stories or columns. And those are slowly kind of trickling in, of people to say, "Hey, what about this person?" Or, "I think this person really has a great story." Things like that. So that's kind of very slowly taking off. But I think too, this opportunity has shifted my perspective in how I'm looking at people and how I'm, reading about them or coming across them. And that's been really cool because not
Sure.
only is my perspective changed and hopefully looking for those little moments of humanity that maybe connect us all, and how can I share that, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, that the challenge really is finding these people because they're everywhere. We all have
Absolutely.
these nuggets of people that live in these communities. There are neighbors, there are, they're the person that checks us out at Casey's every morning. They're out there. Um, but it's just looking for them, seeing them, and then, you know, I guess being brave enough to ask them,
Right.
if you or I can sit down and talk to them and share what they're doing and who they are, and things
Yep.
like that. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and I think that it's unique. There's lots of podcasts, there's lots of writers out there, and to be honest, this actually hasn't been by design, but I'm looking, and almost all of my guests are Central Iowa, right?
Yeah.
Because it's the
Yeah.
people that I know.
Right.
The I had one guest early on because I have a good friend who's a working actor, and that was such a fun conversation, for
So
me,
cool.
just because that's a passion of mine as well.
Yep.
And who, if I can get an introduction to Jason Momoa and get past his publicist, obviously there's still Central Iowa tie there, right? But
Yep.
um, I bring that up because where I was going with that is, now, because you're writing for a small town paper, is the focus meant to stay on local folks, or are you expanding outside of the Atlantic area?
Yeah, that's a great question. So last week, actually, the News Telegraph, the paper is called the Atlantic News Telegraph. So they sent me to Elkhorn, which is still about 20 minutes from Atlantic, a small
Sure.
town in rural Iowa. And there is a gentleman there who is hand making toys, like hand carving wood toys, and he's incredible.
Oh,
And
wow.
has been doing it for 28 years. I didn't even know he was there, which is another, mind blown fact. Like, where's he been? Where have I been?
Right.
Um, but to answer that, I hope to expand this beyond the Atlantic area. So some of the columns that I wrote that I received the most feedback were about my time in Africa and how people in that region of the world are living and their stories. So I think the goal, for probably both myself personally and the newspaper is to expand where those stories are coming from and to bring stories from outside of central Iowa or southwest Iowa to southwest Iowa.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That's
that's
great.
a cool thought. Yeah.
Right on. Right on.
Yeah.
So, and as you go down that road, and maybe that's still the,
Yeah.
the very early phases, but I guess the question that I really want to ultimately ask is, have you started pitching your work to other sources, or is that, and what does that look like? I mean, like, if you're writing,
Yeah.
you said you're not an employee, so I'm assuming you're kind of
Sure.
like a contract situation. Like,
Yep.
are can you go and pitch something to the Register or the, the New Yorker,
Yeah. Yeah, I like how you think. You know, it's a and I'm sure you have experienced this because I've listened to your podcast. It's phenomenal. You do such a great job. I feel like this is such a perfect fit for how Tyler Camerman can share his gifts with the world until I see you in a movie, which I believe, will happen to you someday.
Well,
But
thank you.
yeah. It's I think in pursuit of our passion and finding, and I mean this humbly, finding something that we are good at and pursuing that and kind of honing in on those gifts that I believe we've been given to share with the world. It feels awesome and odd to kind of start doing what you're saying, to pitching these to other places and to share that with a larger audience. But I think if we're honest, that is a goal, that is something that I have on my heart to share it with a larger audience. So yes, my sister-in-law, who's actually also a writer, she's living in England, which is where her husband is from, but um she encouraged me to start sharing some of these columns with like the Our Iowa magazine or pitching, to the news tele or to the Des Moines Register and
Yeah.
things of that nature. And so, yeah, I think sitting down and thinking about what does that look like and how does that kind of fit in with, what some of my goals are, which would be to be, I kind of have a goal for 2023 to be published three places other than the News Telegraph. So what does that look like? Where are those outlets, and kind of starting to make those connections, and yeah, I mean, my goal would be to to pursue that. So yes,
Awesome.
yeah,
That's very cool. Well, and one thing that I thought about, as you were saying, like, trying to find those connecting pieces between the story, and that's
yeah,
really the and you said it perfectly, and now I forget how you said it, but it was, like, the heart of the people, like, that piece is, I immediately go to, okay, does the story of 15, 20 different people from central Iowa and their unique stories, does that, I mean, is that a book? I mean, is
yeah.
that something that, is like, but then the cynic in me is like, yeah, but does somebody in California care about that? Or is that only, so that would be like, okay,
Yeah,
so, and I saw your reaction there. So I'm assuming that's already something you've thought about. So
yeah,
I mean, if that's just in the infancy, or if that's a huge brainchild already, like, tell me about that, if that's something that
yeah. You bet.
is there.
Oh man, that is just a huge. So I go back when you say, does somebody in California care? I think about, do you follow Humans of New York on Facebook?
Yeah.
Pony or whatever. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I think about Brandon and him, starting to walk around the area of New York City and ask people to share their stories or tell them about who they are. And there are these blurbs of info about people. And me sitting here in Southwest Iowa, I've bought every one of his books that have gone to print about who those humans are. And so I think, not to sound arrogant, but I think people care about what we encourage them to care about.
Yeah.
If you present a podcast in a way which you do, or if I write in a way that connects people, I think, like you just said, the connecting of the humans is what allows people to care. And
Yes.
so I do have this vision, and it is in its infancy, but the guy in Elkhorn making the toys, or the mechanic in Cass County who's just goes above and beyond, and everyone knows it. There are more than one of those people in every county in Iowa, right?
Right.
Every county is going to have many, or at least one, hidden gems of a person. And
Yeah.
so, something that's kind of in my view is, how do I find those people? How do I write about them, perhaps in a 3 paragraph or a 10 paragraph uh, story of their life? And I think I think there's some value in what you're saying, and definitely some potential and definitely some notebooks full of ideas on how I kind of bring that to life. So yes.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
do you do anything in the way of, I mean, do you have your own you have your own blog too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
is
I
that
do.
separate, or do you share these stories there as well?
Yeah, so it is separate, but something I'm working on doing is, about a month after the stories are featured in the newspaper, putting them on my blog,
Yeah.
because not everyone subscribes to our newspaper, but
Right.
also I believe there's value in subscribing to our newspaper and in still supporting small town written media, and
Absolutely.
written in print media. So I don't want to take away from that. And so I'm kind of working on adding those stories to my blog, so that, a month or 6 weeks after they're kind of out there, they can still be found, and read and things like that. So yeah, I'm kind of working on merging those two. But up until recently, they've kind of been separate, where my blog has been more, maybe about my faith journey and just about our personal life stories between Jay and I and Hallie.
Right.
And the blog has been, or excuse me, the newspaper and the columns have just been the sharing of other people's stories. But I think those two can naturally merge together and, house both of those types of writing. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, I may have already kind of went there with my, as I was kind of, digging about like book, but like what what dream or goal haven't you reached yet? Like what are, and not to say that there has to be this thing that
Yeah,
you're like
that's
clawing and scratching for, but like
yeah.
is there something out there that's like, hey, this is where I know I'm headed?
Yeah. I think I've decided, or I think it's become clearer to me, and you probably feel this, like sometimes as a creative, the ideas are so vast that it's hard to start niching them down to make sense into actual content, right? Like it's hard to take all that I dream and see and envision, and then, how does that like make sense? So
Yeah.
I think, no, I know there are two goals that I would say I am pretty actively chasing after. And one is writing the story of kind of this unrelenting hope, that was just kind of weaved through the story of Jay and I, and our couple story, our adoption, infertility, grief, losing Liam, all of those things.
Right. Yeah.
So there's definitely big chunks of that I want to put down on paper in hopes that it encourages somebody else, that it would be kind of a hope beacon for others, in the midst of sharing, how we lived that out and how we didn't live that out well at times,
Sure.
the
Yeah.
honesty of that.
Yeah.
And um, I really do want to pursue the book idea of sharing stories of Iowans. I
Yeah.
think we hear all the time about this Iowa nice. And so for you and I, it's just, I mean, you're born and raised here, right, Tyler,
Yeah.
in Iowa? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so for us, it's just like who we are and who our people are. And I think we forget or it's easy to forget maybe that there's something so truly special about who Iowans are. And so
It's true.
the more I have realized that I'm able to share people's stories well, um, I'm that's probably the next project. That is the next project that I'm going to be pursuing is, how do I find these hidden gems in Iowa and how do I document their stories to be on paper forever?
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, well, you mentioned all the different counties, and
Yeah.
we could obviously, I could say this offline as well. But I mean, one thing you could do when you get to that point is just reach out to all these different small town newspapers, tell them what you're doing in Atlantic, and say
That's a great idea.
who do I need to talk to in Sioux Center, who do I need to talk
Yeah.
to in X Y Z.
In Page County or
Yeah,
wherever.
yeah,
And actually, something I'm considering doing. Jay looked up for me yesterday what it costs to kind of run an ad in the Des Moines Register and just saying, I am in pursuit of finding people who, you know, your neighbor Jim, who his story is worth telling and sharing. And
yeah.
so I'm looking at kind of some different ways to find these people without, just spending a month driving around Iowa,
Knocking on
which I
doors.
will do. I want to know where I'm going first before.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, and quick side note, unrelenting hope. That I mean, that sounds like a title of a book on its
it
own.
is.
So yeah.
I think
um,
you're the first person I've shared that with outside of my family. So
oh well,
that
depending on how many people jump on board of this episode, the cat might be out of the bag. So
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. It feels it's been and actually Steph Keller, I did share the title with her, but
yep.
I did think of that a few maybe 2 years ago and I thought, what is something that we just have had to cling to and it's really unrelenting hope and I
Yeah,
think that will resonate I hope with a lot of people someday. So,
that's awesome.
thank you.
Earlier on in the conversation, you said, "Hey, maybe we'll come back to this," and I would like to come back to how do
Yeah.
you, when you have all these different things that all these ideas, all these projects, how do you decide what you're going to hone in on? How do you focus? Especially, you mentioned being kind of that kind of brain where there's lots
Yeah.
of stuff at once. I think that could be really helpful for people that are listening too. Like if you have a process, or if
Yeah.
if you don't feel like it's a process, you just do it. Like just walk us through
What
that a
is
little
that?
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, I was thinking about this and really thinking about maybe what are some things that I would really want to share with our time together today. This week I was really kind of processing all that and making some notes on my phone. And you know how people have yes days, right? Like they say yes, everything they can say yes, their kid, they say yes all day to their kids. So I kind of have a yes life. I previous Mallory, I would say up until maybe a year ago, even, um, I was a chronic yes sayer. And a lot of that came from being a people pleaser. And
Sure.
so I have had to, I think pursuing our passion requires a lot of intentionality and a lot of intentional decision making. And so both both for me, this is kind of how I have had to take a step back and set myself up to be successful in some of these pursuits. So, the intentional decision making for me is both in does the decision advance the pursuit of my passion, but
That's good.
also I need to make sure I wrote this down and I want to I'm just going to read what I wrote because I'm not sure if
Please.
I can paraphrase it,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I said being intentional about what we say yes to so that it does advance us in pursuing our passion, but also it's more than that for me. I need to make sure I said I have a sort of a yes life. I'm a chronic yes sayer to everything type of person. But then I don't always have a strong follow through. And if I'm being honest, I just don't. I love the idea of saying yes, but nobody can actually follow through saying yes to everything.
Everything. Right.
So this is the part that really boils down how I decide. And so for me, it's saying yes to the things that protect the space where my dreams and passions live, as much as it is that the yes will advance the pursuit of my passion.
Oh, that's
So
good.
I need to make sure that the things I'm saying yes to aren't so much that it fills up all of me, because then when it does, my dreams and my passions get pushed to the side because
Yep.
I'm so overloaded. So what I would say I do is I don't always think through the pursuit of these ideas as far as, will this intentional act further me today more than it did yesterday? More so, perhaps I think, will it allow me the space and the freedom to kind of allow those things to naturally happen? Will
Sure.
allow me the
Yeah.
time to write, will allow me the time to um sit down and sort through my notes, or drive and meet the guy in Elkhorn to learn about, his toy making business. And
Yeah.
so um I think for somebody who is full of ideas and is the creative kind of, maybe hyper active in their thoughts and pursuit, asking yourself, what does living that out look like, and what kind of day or week or life do I want to create that those ideas can just kind of be the constant thread of who we are. And like I mentioned earlier, kind of always looking through that lens.
Sure.
So, and then I think too, just really deciding, what is worthy of our space and our time.
That's huge.
What does, February 1st Mallory want to look like in terms of my dreams and my passions and my goals? And so then what do I need to do today, or what do I need to let go of today that gets me to that February 1st Mallory, or that January 2024 Mallory, or, any of those dates in between. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
um, and I think too, Tyler, what I think our passions will bring us joy, right? And I think so settling in, I absolutely love writing, um, obviously, but I've got all these notes on my phone that I could turn into articles, but knowing enough and giving myself enough time of reflection after doing a project, after writing someone's story, to say, okay, wow, that both brought me joy. Gene, the toy guy, called me after the article was published and it brought him joy. And then 6 people that I saw in the community thought to say something to me about the joy it brought them. Like, okay,
Yeah.
those things are telling you where you're supposed to be living in your passion, I think. And so I
100%.
guess it's being willing to, I don't know, have the mental space to hear what you need to hear,
Yeah.
and to know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think what I mean,
Ugh,
all of that, I love it. I'm like, and when I do my kind of recap episodes, I talk about a golden nuggets, and I'm like, okay, how do I
yeah.
condense that last
Yeah, that was a lot
three
of
to
work.
five, 3 to 5 minutes? Because that's all really good. But
Mhm.
what you said there at the end, I think it is. It's almost prior for me. It's
It's
prioritized.
priority. Yes,
And
agree.
like, I got in the habit of well, let me rephrase that. I'm working to get out of the habit of saying I don't have time to do that,
Yes.
because I do. But
Yep.
in reality, if I say that to someone, I'm almost lying to them. Really,
Right.
like,
Right.
and it can be uncomfortable. But I've
Mhm.
tried to push myself to say I can't make that a priority right now. And
Yeah.
I've seen of the probably 10 or 15 times I've said it, I've only had once where I saw somebody get offended. The
Sure.
majority of the time, the people go, "Oh, like
Yep.
I should say that more often."
That is
Which, you know,
that is a golden nugget that I'm going to take away, is like, because that really is what we're saying. I mean, we are in a minute saying, I don't have time for that, but really it we will make time for what is a priority to us, right?
right?
So
Yeah,
is social media my priority, or is starting to read and glean knowledge from writers who do these human interest pieces of story because I want to be a better human interest
Right.
story writer, you
Right.
know? And so, boy, every gosh, that's good, Tyler.
Well, sometimes I say, smart stuff, but usually it's the people I'm
A
talking
lot of times, yeah.
to. No, that is awesome. I love that you spent some time on that because again, like I think, one of the things that I talk about a lot on this show, and it's great. Like I love talking to guys like Brandon, who I mean, he
Yeah.
literally like walked through the process that I talk about. Like a lot of times it
Yep.
becomes a hobby. And then he, short and condensed version, he's like, it became a hobby. And then it became a hobby that took up way too much of my time and cost a bunch of money. Then it
Yeah.
became a side hustle. Then it became a business, and it was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
but not everybody does it that way. Like it's cool to talk to people that find that passion right inside the job that they're doing and they expand it that way. But a
Yep.
lot of people too, that it's about finding something that you're passionate about
Yep.
that may never make you money, but it
Right.
allows you to love your daily job more,
Yes.
and I think that's a story that I want to try to tell to more managers. Is it's like, hey, look, your workers may not find their number one passion right here, but if you can learn what their passions are and
Yeah.
encourage them to go after that, they're probably going to be a more productive worker for you right here.
Yes, I agree. And I want to take a quick side note,
Please.
because something that you just said is so true. But I also have just allowed myself permission to dream the opposite. So you said, sometimes people, I love this analogy or this imagery of somebody having a hobby and then a hobby that takes too much money and then it becomes, a passion or then it becomes a maybe a business and then it is making them money. And so they are now making money on something that they love, right? Which is incredible. And then you commented on, sometimes for people, their hobbies will never, make them money and they don't want it to, and that's okay.
Right.
Um, but something for a long time that I've struggled with is a lot of times I will hear writers of books or of projects say, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm not, I never set out to have this be an income stream for me. And that's totally awesome. But for me, I will say that writing as a means to help support my family is a goal of mine. And I for a long time felt guilty about that, honestly,
Uh,
about saying like, is it wrong that I would want my writing to make me money? And I realized that I was connecting the two of those things too closely. I'm not writing to for only to make money. So
right.
I think it's two totally different, you're not, someone's not doing a podcast only to make money to say, I don't really care about the content. I don't care about the people. I don't care about the project. I'm just here to make a buck. It's like those are two very different
Yes.
things. And so I just want to encourage somebody if they hear this piece to say like it's okay to want your dreams to be to be a financial support for you and your family.
Yes.
I think it's all about your heart and how you go about that really matters. And
Yeah.
so I've just allowed myself to dream that component about like, is it in the cards for me, or would it be God's plan that I could do something I love so incredibly, bless others by sharing their story and bless the readers that would read them, and then it could also perhaps help support my family? Like that would be
Win, win, win,
incredible.
win, 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 win,
Yeah,
win.
yeah.
Yeah.
How do I line up all those cards?
Yeah.
So
That's
anyway,
fantastic.
I
No,
think
that
it's
excellent
like,
point.
yeah, I just think, first, and it both perspectives are not wrong, I guess is what I'm, yeah,
Sure,
is what
sure.
I'm
But
thinking.
I will say you just made me maybe not realize for the first time, but remember, I mean, a through line on literally every guest that I've had on the show. No one has said I set out to make money,
Yeah, that's not,
and
yeah,
not to say that you can't have a successful business with
right,
that in mind, but
right.
every single person I've talked to, it started with a passion in their heart,
Passion
an idea that, or someone said, you are excellent at this, you
at
should go
this.
after this. It was
Yeah,
never, hey, I'm going to make as much money as possible. It was, hey, this is really important to me, so I'm going to start doing it. and
And
hopefully I can
then
make some money along the way.
yeah. I
And
think
sometimes
that's a
it's
really
more intentional than that, but
right. No, but I really think that's actually a very interesting thought and would be so cool to kind of explore out. Like how many people are who started pursuing their passions and then it did just as you said, like, okay, this is actually working. People are saying that I'm maybe good at this. This could become something. And how maybe those businesses that have stemmed from somebody pursuing a passion in the beginning um are just so infinitely different than those who maybe started out saying I'm doing this to, I just it'd be
Yeah.
so cool to like I don't know, explore that in a global perspective.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
think you're right. I think starting out with the passion in your heart and that intentionality just is a very different pathway than
For
another,
sure.
so
For
that's
sure.
cool.
Maybe that can be a
there,
research
there
project.
you go, yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. Um, so I do want to ask you because I'm interested in if you have any thoughts on this, but
Yeah,
what would you say to someone that is I mean it's a two-part question or pick
sure.
one or the other or answer both, but what would you say to someone who is struggling to find their passion and or struggling to get their passion off the ground because they've already found it, they just can't seem to get footing to move forward?
Gosh, those are really great questions. I would say I would like to answer both. I think those are both
Please.
really great questions. Okay. So I think for somebody who is not struggling to find out what their passion is, a couple things. What is something that people come to you for? What is something that people have complimented you on? Maybe it was back in fifth grade, or, maybe it was the time that you, handmade a Christmas card for somebody and they, every time you go over to their house, they still have it on the shelf because, they love it. Or, like really ask yourself, what brings me joy? And when I do it, also brings others joy. I think
Sure.
that is the crossways of maybe what our passions are for us, like what is something that fills me is a bucket filler for me, but in doing so also maybe fills a bucket for somebody else. Maybe it's just not just maybe it's the way you write your child's lunch note in their lunchbox, and so then you create printable lunch notes for parents to download and print out. I mean, I think
That's awesome.
there's so many. I mean, I think it doesn't always have to be um this globally impactful thing. Sometimes it is,
Mm,
and sometimes it's just pursuing the passion that shows your family you love them well. Like that's deep. That's perhaps more impactful than a global, mission to, bring water to Africa, which is also deeply important. But
sure.
I think you get the
Yeah,
idea.
absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. No, that's
but
good.
I think that's hard. I think it's easy to, see kind of these influencers on social media and they all have these niches, right? Like they're
Right.
advocating for ag awareness or they are um, you know, any of the million things we see people, kind of feeding us on our social media feed. But I think your passion brings you joy and it blesses those around you. And so what is that in your life that does those things, and then I think how what was your second question? How to encourage somebody or
Yeah,
how they
like
pursue
somebody
that
that's
or
found that passion, but they're struggling to like keep it moving or
keep
to
it
even get
moving.
started. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna look up something really quick here because it kind of goes into what I was gonna say. So
Yeah.
these notes on my phone of writing stem back to 2018. So
Okay.
these notes on my phone, I have been writing down and jotting down bits of things that I want to remember that I hope to include in something from 2018. And so I would encourage them to do the next right thing toward that passion. So for 5 years, or yeah, 5 years, I guess 4 years before I started putting myself out there, I was I was constantly writing. I was constantly writing something.
Sure.
sometimes it's a whole probably blog post ready to just copy and paste over. And sometimes it's just a sentence or something that I want to remember that somebody else wrote. And so I would encourage people to boldly pursue what their passion is in the form of other people that are doing it. So, you know, it's said that a writer should be reading all the time, taking in other people's writing,
Right.
writing just to write without worrying about editing or grammar or punctuation, just start doing. And even if it is in the 3 minutes while you're in the car pickup line so that you don't forget something, 4 years later, I'm now reaping the benefit of that constant intentional discipline of writing. And
That's
so
awesome.
it does not have to be hours a day or a week. It could be, I mean, in the beginning, it was probably 3 minutes every, I don't even know. I mean, it was just blurps of time. And I thought, I need to at least start. I need to at least start.
Yeah.
And so if every day you can take a small step or every week or every month, I think it will pay strong dividends in the future as we
Absolutely.
pursue that. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that one's huge for me to hear, Mal, because when I launched my website, I had every intention of doing a weekly blog post, and I've done like two, because I
Yeah.
get stuck, and I just wrote down write just to write. Like I have to,
Yep.
even if I write 100 words, like I have to
Yep.
get in the habit of doing that, so that then a weekly or a monthly blog post doesn't feel like such a heavy burden, because
Yeah.
I love to write too, I just don't do it,
Yeah.
and that's
Right.
that's a problem.
And I think that's I think taking away the pressure or the expectation that the steps forward have to look a certain way eliminates almost all barriers
Yeah,
to
that's
anyone
awesome.
pursuing their passion. So
Yep.
any step forward is a step forward. So if it's
Amen.
4 words or
Yep.
4,000, you've made progress in the writer that Tyler wants to be, or the writer that Mallory wants to be, or the writer or the content creator or whoever, you want to be. Every small step matters.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yep. That's awesome. That is so good.
Thank you.
So a logical, just based that you just said something about reading, and I want to ask you about books, but one
Yeah.
question that always ask people, and I think I thought I asked you because you shared the story about your second grade teacher, but
Oh, yeah.
I just always love to ask, tell me about your dreams as a kid, or what did 7 or 10 year old Mallory want to be?
Yeah. You know, Tyler, I growing up, my favorite thing to play was house, and I always had to be the mom. Probably because I had some control freak issues back then. But growing up, I wanted to be a mom. That was really my ultimate dream and goal. And then you get to high school and you have guidance counselors that's not really an option to tick on the intake sheet for high school, is is
Mom.
to be a mom and a wife and to do that well. And so I pursued kind of communications, and I did at one point think I wanted to be a journalist, but then I took one accounting class and decided that I loved numbers, and so I went to college with under an accounting and communications major. Super didn't finish that, if you can imagine. But I think um gosh, this kind of has me reflecting in a really good way. But 7-year-old Mallory wanted to be a wife and a mom, and that's what I'm doing. That's
Yeah,
pretty incredible
that is cool.
to think about. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. And then like I mentioned, the writing from a young age, I think that has stuck with me. I've loved that. I've carried that through all of my school and projects and things like that. And so all of those worlds are kind of coming together in one, and that's a pretty awesome reflection to
It
think
is
about.
pretty
Oh
awesome.
my
Yeah.
gosh.
Very cool. What I love asking that question, because it sometimes it's far off from where the person is, but you
Yep.
can see a correlation. you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like I wanted to be a veterinarian and there's a lot of caring for animals and then,
Yes.
now there's something else over here that ties back to that. But
Yep.
honestly, it's been rare when I ask that question that somebody's like, "Oh yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing now." So it's cool.
Yeah.
But I love that. I love that
That's
that
pretty
was
cool.
a neat little reflection for you as well.
Yeah, that's really awesome.
Cool. So now in the answer before that, you were saying
Yeah.
as a writer, one of the things that everybody encourages you to do is read.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge proponent of reading. I don't do it nearly enough. I listen to audiobooks a lot when I'm in the car because I have
What Jay
trouble
does.
making I was about to say finding the time. I have trouble making the time to read, actually sit with a book. That is still a goal of mine to make that more regularly. But for you, I always stumble around this question because you ask what are your favorite books, and people are like, "Oh my gosh, how do I pick
Yep.
three?" But so what are your either three that really influenced you as a writer? I'll give you like two options here. What are
Okay.
three books that really influenced you as a writer? Or what are your three favorite right now? And then that doesn't mean you have to go back over, the course of your
Yeah.
life and pick your three favorite. So,
Um, there are for sure two books that I can think of that uh will stay with me forever.
awesome.
Both books I've read many, many years ago. One when I was in maybe junior high or high school, and it was called Homecoming by Cynthia Voigt. And it is a story, a fictional story about kids, a group of siblings who kind of travel through trying to find their grandmother. It is a absolutely terrific book for young readers or adults. I
Mm.
highly recommend. But it really is the share. If the minute you asked me that, I thought of the two books, and interestingly enough, it is the sharing of their stories that it is the. This is
Weird.
this is wild. Oh my word. Okay. So that is kind of the sharing. They're narrating it themselves, but they are sharing their life story and kind
Sure.
of this journey physically to find their grandmother.
Mhm.
And then there is a true story, and it is a book called Infidel. And it is about a Middle Eastern woman and her not escaping some of the customs that are forced upon women in that region, and then her escaping that and sharing her story. And it is absolutely not appropriate for young readers, but I do believe it is a very, very important story. Now we know a lot more about, kind of what happens to women in those customs and things
Yeah.
like that. It's more widely talked about. But
Mhm.
when I read this book probably 10 years ago, I knew absolutely nothing. And so it is the sharing of her story, and it's just very raw, but very well done.
Yeah.
Um, and I can't, she wrote it herself, and I cannot think of her name, but the title is Infidel. And I
Okay.
think if you Googled that, you would find it. And
Yep.
so
Yep.
those stories, are done so well in the sharing of the story, that I think both the story itself and how it's shared had an impact on me. And so I think that has shaped me um deeply in
Awesome.
how, I think not only is not only are our stories as humans important, but I think how they're shared are equally as important. And so
Yeah.
that's
Great
kind of
point.
my my underlying, goal is, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool. Now I'm super grateful for your time this morning.
Oh,
This has been an awesome conversation. Um,
agree.
if listeners want to learn more about you, find your
Yeah.
work, get in touch, what is the best way to find that? Is it the newspaper? Is it your website? What's the
Yeah,
best way?
probably, to get in touch with me directly, probably Instagram, just Mallory C. Robinson is my Instagram handle.
Okay.
Has my picture as a profile, obviously. But then our website is our Robinson Family Life .com. And that just kind of has our story, and my blog is on there, and obviously contact, information. And then I do have a link to the newspaper on that. So probably be easiest, one of those two
Yeah.
places to find me. But yeah, I would love to connect. I mean, another, I guess, kind of dream I have in the maybe distant future would be to be able to offer families the option to write their stories, maybe grandparents or how could I just come alongside them? I mean, people don't need me to write their story. They can certainly do that on
Sure.
their own, but I would love to, you know, give that gift to somebody or partner with them in putting their story down on paper for,
Yeah.
their future family. So, yeah.
Wow, that's really neat. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Mal, thanks again. It's
Awesome.
awesome chatting with you. Hey, to all you passion pursuers, thank you again for being along on this journey with me and my guests. I trust that today has been another inspiring day for you, and talk to you again soon. Keep pursuing those passions.
If you have questions or would like to contact us, please check out the show details for contact information. Thanks for listening to the Pursue Your Passion podcast.